From Epping, New Hampshire, home of three moral Plummer and Prescott, politicking with Mr. B. You want it, you got it. Whether you want it or not, you tune in, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to have a heck of a show for you. We got all kinds of things we're going to be discussing, whole new things going on, new administration. President Donald J. Trump is back in office and back in business, ladies and gentlemen. But before we get into any of those other things, we have a little bit of business we got to take care of. Mr. Blazeman, run up the colors. We got a show to get on the road.
I pledge allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And ladies and gentlemen, we are finally going to be seeing, after 4 long years of the blood of justice being spilled indiscriminately, the very core of justice being eviscerated in our nation. It's finally over. It's finally over. And there is some sanity coming back. Oh my goodness, ladies and gentlemen, I can't believe the amount of relief that I feel knowing that Donald Trump is back in office, back in business. There are some people that are out there that are saying, "Oh, you're crazy. Oh, he's nuts. He's doing all these crazy things." I have a cousin that I refer to as the pie crust. She's as flaky as a pie crust at the Pillsbury Bake Off. And ladies and gentlemen, I mean, this is a person you want to talk about. She embodies Trump derangement syndrome. There's all kinds of crazy things. The latest thing that she's talking about is she put something up on Facebook saying something about Chick-fil-A somehow or another doing something to dissolve the marriages of married people or some damn crazy thing, whatever it was. Whatever, and saying that Chick-fil-A and Hobby Lobby is working to dissolve people's marriages and take the rights away from people, and crazy stuff. It's this kind of, as they say, Trump derangements, or this woke ideology that for the next 4 years, the common man will see is finished. The problem is, these people are finished, they're dead, but they're too stupid to know it, and that is a very dangerous thing. So that we must be ever watchful, very vigilant, and stay on top of things and watch, because these people just aren't going to stop. They're not going to go gracefully into that good night, so to speak. So, and unfortunately, ladies and gentlemen, yet again, here I am sitting before you talking about yet another school shooting. Now, this one has a little bit different of a flavor, and I suspect that this has something more with maybe someone who was a slighted or jilted lover or some sort of thing between one male and one female. However, one female student is dead, another student is wounded, and the suspected assailant apparently had died by their own hand. Mr. Blazeman, we have some video about the school shooting. If you want to put it up, I'd appreciate you go ahead and you launch that. Watch, please. The school shooting in Tennessee.
Police say it was late this morning, just after 11 a.m. at Antioch High School, when a 17-year-old armed with a pistol walked into the cafeteria.
Where he then confronted a 16-year-old that we identified as a female Hispanic student, fired, striking her. She is deceased. There is another male 17-year-old young man that was wounded with a graze wound.
Police and other first responders soon arrived.
The shooter was 17 years old. He entered into the cafeteria, firing multiple rounds in the cafeteria, striking her, and then before pulling the weapon on himself. Officers responded and found the male shooter deceased in the cafeteria.
Inside the school, students tried to stay safe.
We kept hearing like gunfire in the front of the cafeteria. Then people looked around screaming, and we ran behind the garbage cans. And then we saw people getting shot on the ground, bleeding and stuff.
Parents began to receive phone calls from frightened students.
I said, "Where are you?" And he said, "I'm outside now. I'm running." I said, "Just run and hide. Stay low. I'm on my way."
Loved ones waited anxiously at a meeting point to be reunited with children.
It's just a terrifying feeling because it's happening so much, and I only have one child, and that's my only child, my son.
It breaks my heart. It breaks my heart that it's normal. It should not be normal.
A school, a community, now mourning what is considered normal. Dan Sheneman, NBC News.
Ed, we thank the
We're getting
local
those updates from Metro Police, who just
Go ahead, please. You can let that.
about 11 o'clock this morning local time, they say a 17-year-old student, a male, walked into the cafeteria of Antioch High School and fired several gunshots with a pistol. 2 students were hit, 1 killed, as you guys mentioned. Another student right now at the hospital in stable condition. We're told by authorities that that student has a graze wound to her arm. We also know another student has some sort of facial injury, but not a gunshot wound, but also someone who is being treated after this incident. This is a school of about 2,000 students. It's a high school. And guys, I can tell you that this community, it's a pretty traumatic experience no matter what, but especially for this community, because if you remember, it was just in March of 2023 when 6 students at Covenant Elementary School, the Christian school, were killed by a former student. If you remember, that school, if you do a quick search, about 30-minute drive from this high school. So this is a community that is still sort of trying to recover from the trauma of that incident. And that was very clear from family members as they were waiting to just get reunited. You can see with the buses here bringing students to their family members from that high school. But I want you to listen to one interview from a grandmother who was waiting just to see their family member come back to them from that high school after this incident today. Take a listen.
Tonight, when it's all over with, I'll lay in the bed and I'll cry. Because I can't right now. I gotta make sure everybody's good. So.
We're going to hope that she is going to get off the bus pretty soon, and you're going to be able to hug her. And what's that going to be like?
That's a true statement right there, B.
Because
Absolutely. Absolutely.
those other parents.
And if you're out there watching,
You're not gonna be able to do
508-974-4231, we'd like to hear from you what you folks have to say about this. I mean, this needs to stop, ladies and gentlemen. This needs to stop. Now, we don't know anything of what the cause is of all of this. Is this another in a seemingly endless line of school shootings have been taken care of? We're at the hands of it. The lion's share at the hands of this has been happening because of people who had been bullied. Is this something of that nature? Was this something where there was a personal relationship between one person and the other, or was this just fortunate in the matter that a lot more other students weren't killed before the suspected assailant suspectedly killed themselves? What are your thoughts? I'd like to know. Yeah, I'm a person. I enjoy the rights of gun ownership. I enjoy using them. As a young man and as an adult, I've enjoyed going hunting. I enjoy target shooting. I am not a person who's of a mind to say, it's time that we just take all the guns off the street. It's not going to happen. It will never happen. Not in this country. Something needs to be done, yes. And it needs to start at home. People need to be responsible and responsibly teaching their children about gun usage, gun ownership, and to leave the things where they belong if they're not being used, secured properly under the control of the homeowner. You cannot, and it would be irresponsible of me to say that that's the only way that people that are doing the shootings are getting a hold of guns. Guns are everywhere. But you buy the things by the bushel out on the streets. All of these drug dealers and criminals of whatever kind, they're carrying them and passing them around, finding them in storm catch basins, whatever. But something must be done. Yes. I see. We're moving on to our next subject, ladies and gentlemen. Pardon me, ladies and gentlemen. For all of you who may not have yet heard, on his final last few minutes, while President Trump was amid his inauguration, Joseph Biden went ahead and stroked his pen and stroked all of his family members by doing so and gave them all presumptive pardons. For what? Who knows? But whatever the case may be, guess what? Joe Biden just turned around and said, well, hey, if my family did something or whatever else, I'm going to pardon them, send them on their way.
Kind of like it's kind of like admitting guilt, don't you think, B? It's admitting guilt.
It's not just admitting guilt. It's kicking the American people in the teeth and flagging their nose at them. No, we got away with it all. Pardons his kid when he said repeatedly.
Did he pardon? I don't think you can pardon yourself, could you?
I don't know if he could pardon himself or not. I have no idea. However, there are certain protections that a person has while they're in office of president. But here's the gaffe, ladies and gentlemen. Now that all of these people have been given a presidential pardon, this has taken away their right to assert their Fifth Amendment right. If they get summoned to a court proceeding, they must testify. They cannot say, oh, sorry, I plead the Fifth. Whatever's going on, so I don't know what or why or how. But okay, we got a video, folks. Go ahead, Mr. Blazer. Go ahead, run this video. Let's you got to see this.
Well, in his final hours as president, Joe Biden made a few radical moves of his own. He issued presidential pardons to people who've never been charged with anything. They include his own siblings and their spouses, and politicians and public figures that he believes need protection from a vengeful Trump regime.
With a pat on the back, some final parting words between presidents, and a hug between two first ladies, before the new administration waved goodbye to Joe and Jill Biden.
Never, never, never give up. Never. We're leaving office. We're not leaving the fight.
In an extraordinary move, just minutes before Trump was sworn in, Joe Biden issued several presidential pardons to politicians, public servants, and members of his own family, none of whom have been charged with any crime.
I think it was unfortunate that he did that.
Pardoned today were Biden's brother and sister-in-law, James and Sarah Jones Biden, his sister, Valerie Biden Owens, and her husband, John. Frank Biden, his youngest sibling, was also included. So too was Dr. Anthony Fauci, the US COVID response chief. plus all who investigated the January 6 riots and those who later testified, including former Capitol Police officer Harry Dunn. And from across the aisle, Republicans who turned their back on Trump, Adam Kinzinger and Liz Cheney.
I mean, Liz Cheney is a disaster. She's a crying lunatic and crying Adam Kinzinger. He's a super crying. I never saw the guy not crying. He's always crying.
Also pardoned was retired General Mark Milley, who Trump once labelled a woke train wreck. His portrait was hung in the Pentagon only 10 days ago. Today, it was removed. These public servants have served our nation with honour and distinction and do not deserve to be the targets of unjustified and politically motivated prosecutions, Biden said. My family has been subjected to unrelenting attacks and threats. Unfortunately, I have no reason to believe these attacks will end. In his 50 years in politics, Joe Biden has never made a move quite like this, perhaps smearing his own legacy for one final power play. Taylor Ryan for 10 News First.
And we thank the 10 News First people for their content and for the appeal that are using it. Thank you very, very much. 508-974-4231. I'd love you to pick up the phone, call us, and tell us what you think. Why would Biden pardon people that have never been in the limelight at all? There must be something. There's got to be something tying them to something. There must be. I mean, bad enough. His son, Hunter, whom he swore up and down, however many times, no, I'm not entertaining the thought of, I'm not gonna give him a pardon. I will not pardon my son, blah, 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 yada, 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 yada. And what does he wind up doing? He turns around and gives Hunter Biden the pardon. And now, along with all these other things, because he's guilty. Thank you, Jesse. Good evening. Welcome. Glad to have you. And in the background, we got Fauci. That person who definitely deserves to be behind bars. I'm just gonna say that. He deserves to be behind bars for the things that he did, the lies that he told. Flippantly. Things about masks and injections and this and that, 6 foot social distancing and all of this garbage and everything else. Closing down our nation for 2 years. Children not being able to socialize in schools. Fauci is a criminal. I absolutely agree. Not anymore. Not anymore. Thank you, Joe Biden. I am guessing, and this is just a wild card guess. This is my own personal opinion, folks. I am thinking that somehow, somewhere along the line in this long line of Biden family members that have all gotten pardons, somehow they were probably tied in to investments or somehow or another making money off of all of these COVID injections and whatever the hell they are, vaccinations, the jabs, and all that stuff. Somewhere along the line, somehow his family profited. And for that would be a real good reason for their having need of being pardoned. What are your thoughts? 508-974-4231. We got another video going to come up. Trump will find a loophole and take them pardons away. You watch. I would love to see that happen, Jess. I would love to see it. I would love to see it. I'll tell you what, we're going to take a break in a couple of minutes, and when we come back, we've got another video for it. It's not a joke. It's something about Marco Rubio, but we're going to take a break in a couple of minutes, and we're going to come right back. Won't be very long. Mr. Wavy, you want to go ahead and take that break now? welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for sticking along with us. Politicking with us today here in Epping, New Hampshire. And we, of course, want to give a big shout out to my dear friend, Mr. Blazeman, who is the engineer and the fellow who's all working all the things behind the scenes. I want to say thank you very much, Blaze, for all the work that you're doing, for bringing up the videos and the slides and this and that, whatever else we've got. We've got a video that's coming up with Marco Rubio in it. Why don't we go ahead and launch that, Mr. Blazeman? Thank you very much.
Operation of the Panama Canal. We're reminded that some things maybe aren't quite as they should be there right now, given that the Chinese now control major ports at the entry and the exit to the canal. It seems appropriate to say that there's at least an open question. There's some doubt as to whether the canal remains neutral. Would you agree with that assessment?
Yeah, and yes. Here's the challenge. Number one is, look, I want to be clear about something. The Panamanian government, particularly its current office holders, are very friendly to the United States and very cooperative, and we want that to continue. And I want to bifurcate that from the broader issue of the canal. Now, President Trump is not inventing this. This is something that's existed now for at least a decade in my service here. I took a trip to Panama in 2017. When on that trip to Panama in 2017, it was the central issue we discussed about the canal, and that is that Chinese companies control port facilities at both ends of the canal, the east and the west, and the concerns among military officials and security officials, including in Panama at that point, that could one day be used as a choke point to impede commerce in a moment of conflict. That's going back to that. But before you got here, and I don't want to have to dig through this folder to find it again, but basically cited that how the immediate past head of Southern Command, just retired General Richardson, said she flew over the canal, looked down and saw those Chinese port facilities and said, those look like dual-use facilities that in a moment of conflict could be weaponized against us. The bipartisan China Commission over in the House last year had testimony and hearings on this issue, and members of both parties expressed concern. The former ambassador to Panama that served under President Obama has expressed those concerns. This is a legitimate issue that needs to be confronted. The second point is the one you touched upon, and that is, look, could an argument be made? And I'm not prepared to answer it yet because it's something we're going to have to study very carefully, but I think I have an inkling of I know where this is going to head. Can an argument be made that the Chinese basically have effective control of the canal anytime they want? Because if they order a Chinese company that controls the ports to shut it down or impede our transit, they will have to do so. There is no independent Chinese companies. They all exist because they've been identified as national champions. They're supported by the Chinese government, and if you don't do what they want, they find a new CEO, and you end up being replaced and removed. So they're on the complete control of their government. This is a legitimate question, and one that Senator Risch had some insight as well. He mentioned that in passing, that needs to be looked at. This is not a joke. The Panama Canal issue is a very serious one.
And so the mere potentiality of that, the ability to exercise that control, even until such time as they do it, as they do shut it down, is a concern, is it not?
Well, I listened 48 hours ago to FBI Director Wray in one of his exit interviews he gave to the press, and he said the Chinese are embedded in our utilities and critical infrastructure. Now, he didn't say every single day they're shutting off the power in the United States. He said that if there's a conflict, they're embedded and they could shut off the power in key places. We've all identified that as a threat. The fact that you can do it, you don't have to do it every day. No one's claiming that the Chinese are shutting down the canal every day. What the claim is, the very legitimate concern is, that if these companies control both ends of that canal in a time of conflict and the Chinese tell them, shut it down and don't let the U.S. go through there, we got a big problem, a big economic problem and a big national security and defense problem. The ability to do it alone is a threat. We shouldn't ignore it. It isn't a joke. It's a legitimate issue, and it needs to be solved.
Excellent, and that feeds right
hold
into the next
the
thing I
video
wanted to
for a
ask you
moment,
about,
please,
which,
Mr. Blazeman.
just didn't.
Ladies and gentlemen, for those of you who are watching this, maybe you didn't catch the gist of this. In essence, what he's saying is that at the drop of a hat, right now, the Chinese government can turn around and point its finger at the companies that own these things at both ends of the Panama Canal and blockade us, shut us out, shut down all trade and commerce going through the Panama Canal, which, as you all remember from not so long ago, when they had things that were all bunched up because something happened and they couldn't get ships through and whatnot, and there was a boat that had gotten lodged in it. They wound up having to take all the shipping and rerouting it down around the southern part of the continent, adding months onto and screwing up shipping and commerce all over the place. And all China has to do now is lift up the phone and say, you know what? Shut it down. And, by the way, we've got our hands into the critical infrastructure in several places in the United States, and we can turn off their light switch. There goes your electricity, no matter whether or not it's being powered by a nuclear power plant or wind or solar. They could pull the plug on your house, on your city, on hospitals, on your schools, on your churches, within the bat of an eyelash. How the hell did this happen? Go ahead, roll that.
Involves areas of dual use capabilities throughout the Western Hemisphere. Ports, infrastructure, critical minerals, and so forth. We've had policies from the Biden administration involving the supercilious use of untargeted foreign aid and sort of cultural coercion in order to persuade them to, or in an effort to coerce some of these countries to adopt policies that are contrary to their established cultural norms, abortion rights, LGBT policies and curriculum, and so forth. That probably hasn't helped in this conflict, in this still somewhat soft conflict in which many of these countries are opening their doors to China. I can't imagine that will have helped. How will your approach to Chinese incursion in the Western Hemisphere be different from those of the current administration?
Well, there are a couple points. The first is the Chinese incursion in the hemisphere involves, number one, investment of dollars. Like, as an example, they go into some country, they say, here's $5 million or $10 million to build a stadium, but in exchange, you have to let us build out your 5G network using Huawei, safe cities, and the like. And by the way, here's a couple $1 million for you and your friends as a bribe. Okay, that's their first level of engagement. They go in and then in some ways they create deals that you can not possibly pay back. So now you've got a debt that you can't pay back, and they have you trapped. And now they've got your vote at the UN and your cooperation on X, Y, and Z. And that happened in Panama, by the way. In 2016, 2017, that was well understood that part of the investments they made in Panama were conditioned upon Panama's ability to convince the Dominican Republic and other countries to flip their recognition away from Taiwan. That happened. So that's number one. The second element of their involvement is they go into a country and a Chinese company will buy up the lithium mines or access to the rare earth minerals in these long-term contracts. And that exists in allied countries. The Argentines will tell you there are a number of business deals that the Chinese and Chinese companies have gotten a hold of in Argentina that even if they wanted to back away, they can't get out of the deals because of the way they were structured. So that's number two. And then number three is their presence. The Chinese are actively involved in military installations in the Western Hemisphere on the island of Cuba, 90 miles from our shores. Only a few hundred miles from where Space Force operates and NASA and Cape Canaveral. Only a few miles from MacDill, where we have Central Command and Special Operations Command. Only a few miles from Southern Command. Only a few miles from Eglin Air Force Base and the test range we have out in the Gulf of Mexico. All of these things, this is real, and it's operating right off the coast of the United States. They have a presence in our region. So we have to acknowledge that this is happening, and then we have to be present and have counters to each of these, and/or there has to be consequences for each of these. Fortunately, the United States has strong relationships in multiple key countries in the region, and I think we have the opportunity to build upon that and won't and in ways that can attract the sort of investment that they would rather have than the Chinese investment. But right now it's not available. It's not happening. There is no American alternative to what the Chinese are offering. So hopefully we can provide the openings for that.
Indeed, and I appreciate your enthusiasm and thoughtfulness in providing that answer. Now, you touch on another issue when you reference the significance of agreements made by prior administrations. Obviously, the Javier Milei administration in Argentina wouldn't have been as likely to enter into those arrangements as his predecessor was. In the United States, we have to keep this in mind. The Constitution, of course, allocates the treaty-making and binding power. It spreads it out between two branches. The president can enter into a treaty, can sign a treaty, but that treaty isn't ratified unless 2/3 of the Senate does it. So
B, I gotta ask. Do you think you think that we're prepared for action if needed?
We will be. Are we now? No, because for the last 4 years we have languished in a gummed up environment, a lackadaisical administration which cared nothing for the strength and the integrity of our military. And now President Trump is faced with rebuilding and strengthening and fortifying, which can be done. But are we ready right now? Absolutely not. I mean, crime in these sakes, he has to put our military in non-police roles, but they will not have police powers, but in support roles, down just to reinforce our southern border, to get that under the control. It's a mess. Are we ready? Hell no. Will we be ready if we're lucky? I don't see a completely strong readiness for 2 to 3 years.
Wow. Thank you.
Joe Biden's farewell letter to President Donald Trump is revealed. The newly sworn-in 47th President of the United States found a note from his predecessor in the famous Oval Office desk post-inauguration, January 20th. And now the contents of the letter are revealed, with Fox News reporting Joe Biden's message read, "Dear President Trump, as I take leave of this sacred office, I wish you and your family all the best in the next 4 years. The American people and people around the world look to this house for steadiness in the inevitable storms of history. And my prayer is that in the coming years will be a time of prosperity, peace, and grace for our nation." He added, "May God bless you and guide you as he has blessed and guided our beloved country since our founding." The letter was signed Joe Biden and dated January 20th, 2025. Prior to the content of the letter being revealed, President Trump opened up about the note during a press conference with reporters.
It was a very nice letter. I mean, I could show it because I think it was a nice letter. Maybe I will. I think just basically it was a little bit of an inspirational type letter, enjoy it, do a good job. Important, very important, how important the job is. But I think it was a nice letter. I think I should let people see it because it was a positive for him in writing it. I appreciated the letter.
That was very interesting. And thank you, E! News, for allowing us to use that content as well. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we're coming up on the 9 o'clock hour. I've got an early day to start. So I want to say thank you very much for tuning in. If you like this, tell your friends about it, share it, bring them along next time. If you've got an idea, something going around in the back of your head that says, you know what, I'd like to try a podcast. I think I've got a show that's a real good winner. Get a hold of us here at the FFN Network, ffnnetwork9@gmail.com. Send a note, get a hold of Blazeman, and chit chat, this, that. Put some contact information in. I'm sure you will be pleased with the outcome of it, and we would love to be able to have something come in. One of the things that I would love to see, if somebody's got a fishing type talk show or some kind of a sporting type of talk show, fishing, hunting, some sort of game things going to roast. Maybe you're a gamer. Maybe it's something like that. Whatever you got. You got an idea, bring it to us here at the FFN Network. In the meantime, again, I want to reach out and say thank you very much to Mr. Blazeman. This is an FFN Network production, all rights reserved. We got to change that to 2025, of course. That I'm Mr. B, politicking with Mr. B. I want to thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you all again soon. Everybody, take care. Have a good night.
You have just watched an FFN Network production.